I'm Derek Baird, and I'm one of the composers on Nevermind.
My name is Jeff Tinsley. I'm co-composing with Derek Baird on the Nevermind project.
I'm Dustin Painter, and my role was a head sound designer.
I was initially attracted to the Nevermind project because it was clear the team was asking music to do things that is kind of unusual and you often don't get to do as a composer. Integrating it very deeply with their biometric sensor and this whole stress monitoring system that they were pitching to us. And it just seemed like there was a lot of room to run with that, and I was excited about that concept.
My favorite part of doing music for Nevermind is probably just creating the soundscape, the mood of the world that we're in. You know, which may change over time. We may have different patients, or we may have different moods, but I think there's still some continuity to that. I think that the music has a certain ambiance to it that works with this project alone, I think, almost. It has its own character.
So one of the biggest challenges with Nevermind was the audio landscape, because we're very used to dealing with visual stimuli. We deal with them every day. Everybody can agree on what green is, well, except for teal. Everyone can agree on what red is. But music, we all have very, very drastically different tastes. And a lot of that comes to do from the fact that we like feeling one way or another, and feeling another way thrills us. And so getting the soundscape of Nevermind right was really one of the biggest challenges. Luckily, we had a great sound team between Derek Baird, Jeff Tinsley, and Dustin Painter, who all understood that in order for the music and the sound effects to be effective, they also had to be not overused. They had to be leveraged. They had to be used sparingly to cause effect. Otherwise, that effect wore off. And so what ended up happening was they ended up creating a landscape that was not just wall-to-wall music, but allowed for room, for breathing room at times when you had to reflect, or when the focus had to be centered on the narrative rather than just music that is forcing you to feel one way or another.
I think that it's really tempting, especially when you're designing sound, to want to add in multiple types of just like plugins and sounds, and just things, sounds on top of sounds on top of sounds, trying to forcibly creep somebody out. It's almost the same way with sometimes in film scoring, when some people want to just write music that's like, this is how you should feel, instead of being subtle about it and just quietly producing that fear or quietly producing that emotion. And I think with Nevermind, it was a chance that sure, it was going to be a bit of a challenge to bring out those kind of fear, the kind of fear and some of those reactions in the players, but a lot of it was going to be based on, I think, simplicity, and also making it, while it is almost otherworldly a little bit, exploring these other minds of patients, that it really needed to be also kind of a realistic aural experience, because some of the creepiest things and some of the things that are scariest to me are things that could be real. Things that sound real, things that just are the closest thing to real.
An additional really neat thing about using sound with visuals, but in some cases instead of visuals for this sort of thing, is that sound gives you the opportunity to be very subtle about these things and almost give the player the feeling that they're subconsciously experiencing these memories the same way that the patient experienced them, or that anybody would experience an actual memory, the way that you not only hear in your mind the things that people said during this event, or things that happened, you remember exactly what their voice sounds like. You remember it's kind of this own soundscape that got imprinted into your brain. So it's a really neat thing about using odd sound for this sort of thing.
I think it's less. I think the music doesn't necessarily add to what's there. I think that it is part of it. I think that there part of one big whole of creating a feel for not only the game but each individual level. And I think this feel is something that's it's perhaps a little bit describable. You could say that it's dark, or that it's maybe a little bit gloomy, but really we don't want to be too descriptive, because I think that defeats the purpose of this being somewhat of a mystery.
There definitely is kind of an evolution of the music through the spilled milk level in Nevermind. It starts off actually fairly serene as you get into the level, and as you progress through, you start getting into darker things, darker images, ideas, both visually and in the soundscape. We start moving to more, it's very electronic score, a lot of heavily manipulated sounds where we're going for just pure tension at the top of the spectrum and everywhere between, and having the ability to ramp that up as events happen. So by the end, you're getting all these, screeching sounds, scraping metal sounds, stuff that, hopefully a lot of the users won't even be able to know where these sounds came from. They've been processed to that level. They're just basically pure tension in the form of a sonic soundscape.
Well, the music for the spilled milk level, we started with the idea that this should have some domestic sort of roots to it. So we played with the idea of putting piano in there. And as well, though, I think for this level, there is a sense of fright, almost. It's a sort of a mixture of feeling at home, but also feeling scared, and also feeling a little bit emotional at different points. And particularly in the scarier parts of the level, or the darker parts of the level, we wanted to create something that doesn't hit you over the head that this has to be scary. It's just suggesting, and it's, we don't want to have a constant pounding rhythm or anything like this. We want to have a sparse soundscape that's just going to suggest what we are after in terms of mood and I guess emotional state, but also the state of things around you. But
yeah, well, the soundscape of Nevermind really is something that it starts out comfortable. It's something that feels like home, something that feels safe, and then without you really noticing it, it quietly starts to turn sinister. It's really switching, from the moment of safety to being uncomfortable to being unsure. It's kind of like, moments in real life, how, you can feel safe, and then suddenly you just feel things creeping up on you. You feel unsure of things. You feel, worried. You're scared. And those things tend to kind of, start to slowly happen without you really realizing it until you go back and think about how time was passing. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with the soundscape, was for it to feel, it's supposed to feel like home at first, and then slowly get to the point of where suddenly you go, something's not quite right here. So that was the ultimate goal.
Really writing the music to change states of tension. As I say, there are many different ways that you can ratchet up tension in music. You can do it dynamically in terms of volume. You can do it with the speed of the tempo. You can shift things up to kind of confuse the listener a little bit, which should, in these cases, if there's something action-wise happening on the screen, it should, adding confusion musically should add to the tension. And these are just some of the tools that you can use to add tension in these different places. Now, also you can. We've played a little bit with the ideas of using actual sounds that do frighten us, or that do have certain effects on us. So in the car maze portion, I've used sounds that are evocative of cars going by, a little bit of a Doppler effect, or screaming. I've actually used nails on a chalkboard as one of the levels, but this is a little bit in the experimental phase. But to me, the timbre of what you're hearing is also another dimension.
The biofeedback element of Nevermind is such a huge part of the game. We absolutely had to address that in a special way in the music. Layering techniques is nothing new in game music, but we are definitely trying to find a special way to link different levels of tension in the music with different levels of the stress monitoring system in the game engine. And I think that's a really unique way to use layers of music, whereas normally a new layer will just kick in when you get to a certain point. You'll pass through a certain door in a game. It's very, it's been done, and it's very straightforward, and it's not as deeply interactive to the different ways that a different player can play this game. Whereas one player at one moment of the game might have it completely under control, and another player could be just losing it. And the music has to have that ability to rise and fall and react to each individual player's unique experience. So, I mean, that's a great challenge. I keep coming back to that kind of being my favorite challenge of this game. But the music's definitely being specifically tailored to serve that function.
Okay. So the idea of the continuity music system initially came to me when I began to write, in the typical fashion for video games, you write these layered loops. Coming from a classical background, I generally don't like the idea of loops altogether, but I understand why we need to use them. And I wanted to find a way to maybe expand upon that so that we can actually parallel the things that are happening in more than one dimension. There are different ways that you can build tension within music, and you can build change within music. And traditionally in video games, that would be to have one layer of calm, and then on top of that you would add in maybe a drum to have a little bit more tension, and then maybe add some more instruments, have more and more tension, which is nice, and it certainly works. But there are other ways you can change the tension as well. You can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. You can change the tempo. You can change the meter. You can change anything, and that's the great thing about film music as well, is that you can change at any point, because the change itself is going to change the mood, the feel that is happening. So you don't have to stay on the same old thing over and over again. So we're hoping that this system will enable the music to actually follow the action as if there were maybe some live band there playing with it, and sort of following the contour of the tension. And ideally, this will actually affect the emotions of the players and the stress level of the players. That remains to be seen how that will work with each individual person. Everyone's musical background is different, and some music may scare people, and it may sound silly to someone else. So that's a variable that we'll be working with. But the idea of building tension in different dimensions is really the core idea of the system. So.
And one of my favorite features of Nevermind is what we've called the oral narrative. And with the oral narratives, literally the walls in this house come to life. And we've all had these experiences when we were a child. We're playing our game and we hear next door our parents arguing, or how traumatic is it the first time that we hear our father or our mother crying. And it's really the sound that ends up staying with you, because the image, you try to block it out, and there's a million images that bombard you, but just that sound of complete helplessness kind of sticks with you.
So what we're doing in Nevermind is one part of the soundscape is we're using these kind of vocalized remnants of memories, almost emanating from the walls, if you will, as if you're experiencing the same kind of internalized vocalizations that the patient, the person literally does. As you recall memories in life, you can remember not only like what people said, or you can remember their voices, and you remember how it was said. We definitely did have inspirations for the sounds we're trying to create, although at the same time, Derek and I discussed this, but with the music, we definitely wanted to do something that sounded as original as the game concept is. So while we draw on things like Silent Hill, some of the things that have been done, especially in the electronic realm, also some of the Jason Graves stuff, particularly Dead Space, for me personally was a huge influence. Going for all kinds of different process sounds and trying to find literally even the sonic components themselves being very unique, so that whatever you build out of that is a completely new sounding vibe. Because we felt like this project just had something. I can't find a lot of games to compare it to. I can't find a lot of experiences that it compares to. So we want the music to kind of be out there in a similar way.
That I hope that I did my job well, and I hope that you leave scared and informed and ready to continue playing it.